As I listened to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris speak last night, I felt overwhelmed with joy. We'd be listening to science again, working for anti-racism, and there would not be this demonizing of each other. And seeing Kamala up there, this woman, this black woman, this Indian woman, being our vice president-elect, it filled my heart. But I also wondered, how are you doing? I mean it. How are you doing? After we went through these past 4 years and this election cycle and this past week, waiting to find out who our next president would be, how are you doing? I can tell you that even though we now know who our next president will be, this past 4 years and this past week, oh my gosh, I have been run through the ringer, feeling surprised, scared, confused. How close this race was. And I wondered who were all those people who voted for the 45th president to remain in office. I tried not to let my own bias rise up within me as I wondered, who were those people? Those people. My prejudice showing again. What I'd like to do is to approach all people with curiosity, not prejudice. As I try to make sense of what is going on in our country. With all this election drama, there have been times when I just couldn't make sense of what was happening. One moment I would feel normal, calm, at ease. Then suddenly it was like my world was on fire and I was overwhelmed with the election, the pandemic, and the other issues started coming in that I had fears about: climate change, the recession, COVID-19. Oh my gosh. I wondered, particularly this past week, if you had felt the same. All these myriad of emotions and worries and thoughts. I guess we've all been kind of traumatized by all this political chaos. You know, in trying to make sense of this, I found a word that describes it. Sosobra. Sosobra is a peculiar form of anxiety that when we are inundated with diverse and divisive messages from within and without, we become destabilized. We find it difficult to settle into a single point of view. We sway from what feels like one reality to another. Questions in our minds might range from the simple, isn't this a lovely autumn day in Florida? To how could I possibly deal with all these converging historical catastrophes? And it's difficult to ground yourself when you're swinging back and forth. It's hard to know what to depend on, what to lean into, how to deal with everything when it's in constant flux. And I don't see that ending for a while. This anxiety is more acute during times of isolation and lack of community. Francisco Gallegos, assistant professor of philosophy at Wake Forest University, and Carlos Albert Sanchez, professor of philosophy at San Jose State University, wrote about people who were suffering zozobra. They wrote, first, people in a disintegrating society become prone to self-doubt and reluctance to take action despite how urgently action needs to be taken. Second, they become prone to cynicism, even corruption, not because they are immoral, but because they genuinely do not experience a common good for which to sacrifice their personal interests. And third, they become prone to nostalgia, fantasizing about returning to a time when things made sense. In the case of America, this applies not only to those wearing MAGA caps. Everyone can fall into this longing for a previous age. Even I. In these past 4 years, longed for when Obama was in office, and there was no daily barrage of abusive tweets. It was a time when I could see us making progress on issues for the LGBTQ community, that I felt we were making progress in racial equality and ending systemic racism. And when the world was beginning to acknowledge that women have been abused and harassed in the workplace and the world, and that needed to stop. But I know longing for the past is not productive. It's not based on reality, but on my idealized view of reality, and will not help create a just, equitable, and compassionate world. This week I had a hard time grounding myself, coping with the swings of that zozobra anxiety, and even considering next steps for the future. I found it difficult to let go of all these feelings, swinging from relief to sadness, anger, frustration, fear, joy. They were so extreme at times, they would overtake me. And I needed to take time to discern what my role was going to be in helping heal the country. All the country. Particularly those people who would be grieving the loss of their leader. I was talking to a member of this congregation after one of our twice daily meditations this week, and she reminded me that it's a lot easier for her to forgive and reach out to those who lost because we won the election. She went on to say She could go on and forgive and reach out if her candidate had lost, but it would have had to take some time. She would need some time to work through her own grief and pain first. This made me stop and consider what is really happening to those people who feel lost right now, grieving their loss. And it's coming out in anger and frustration and sadness and so many things. Would they even want to talk to someone like me? Would they even care if I reached out to them to offer them compassion? I know that many of us are still worried about what's going to happen in our country over these next few weeks and months. We saw it in the crowds outside the ballot counting centers yelling, "Stop counting," or "Keep counting," while trying to intimidate the workers inside. We saw it in the president trying to infuse our country with conspiracy theories about the results of the election. We see it. We still see it in people like Steve Bannon and others who are calling for violence or civil war. I want to tell you first that this congregation and Unitarian Universalist congregations and the Unitarian Universalist Association are preparing for whatever discord may happen in this country. And we're not the only ones. For your peace of mind, I want you to know that the leaders in your church and I have created an asset map for the resources available to us, including a list of our allies in Miami and through America, so that we are ready to aid this community and the larger community as we all work for peace here in Miami and in this country. There are people mobilized who know what resources they have and are prepared to do what we can to help peace prevail. But I want to let you know that I'm not scared and that I have begun to feel hope that the tide is already turning toward peace. My aunt is a rather passionate Trump supporter. She even got kicked off Facebook once for what she said. On Friday morning, I read this on her Facebook page. Waking up to still Biden. It's okay, my friends. We will still support him because the people have spoken. I know it's not over, but let's face it, he's won. Let it be. I just hope I can get some better medical help. I'm sure it's hard living with dementia. I'll be there too soon, so I have sympathy for Biden. Well, it's not all positive. I mean, she thinks he has dementia, Biden has dementia, but she's taking that step and accepting the results and begun to grieve and move forward. And she's even, as I've looked at some of the chat in there, she's helping her friends do the same. The work to reach out to those experiencing grief right now will be a long and daunting process. Desmond Tutu once wisely said that there is only one way to eat an elephant: one bite at a time. What he meant by this is that everything in life that seems daunting, overwhelming, even impossible can be accomplished gradually by just taking it a little bit at a time. We need to tackle the healing of our country one bite at a time. And it's not just my aunt that gives me hope. The young people in our country give me hope too, and they're doing some of this biting of the elephant. They have been for the past 4 years. They've been building coalitions, grassroots organizing. And I got to talk to some of them this week. From organizations like the New Florida Majority, the New Georgia Project, the Texas Organizing Project, the People Michigan, and Detroit Action. And I didn't hear from them anxiety or fear or anger. I heard, we made progress. What we've built here is just the beginning. Young people and people of color voted in large numbers, they said. And more people voted than ever before in the United States. They reflected that through their phone banking, their work on early voting, door knocking, they accomplished a great deal. They talked about their victories locally, statewide, and nationally. And they continued to plan what they will be doing on into the future, focused on the issues of importance to them. How are you doing? I know I asked you already. But I think it's a question we'll need to be asking ourselves for a while. The anxiety that we've gone through is real. And we need to take time to care for ourselves, take care of each other, those ones that we love, and those that we've been separated from for a while due to this politics. There are many hopeful signs about the future. And there is work to be done. I attended a lecture on Friday on what we had learned from this election. It was put on by the Interfaith Alliance of Iowa. I used to be on the board of this organization. They still send me alerts about lecture series and such. This particular lecture was by Rachel Payne Caulfield, a professor of political science at Duke University. And she was talking about the results of the election. One of the big insights I gained from her talk is the nature of what's called pivot counties. You might Google that later. Pivot counties are counties that voted for Obama twice and Trump twice. They're generally rural counties in the United States. She studied them, visited them, has read research by many other political science professors in this country, and she's found a few things out. And I want to share these with you, because I think they're important as we look to the future. As it turns out, these counties have high rates of suicide, drug addiction, poverty, and COVID-19. Within these counties, many towns are dying. These people in these towns have little social capital or power. Churches are closing, small businesses are dying. Social gatherings that had held these communities together are no longer happening. The people in these counties no longer feel like they're being heard. They hoped that Obama would turn things around, so they voted for him twice. They felt that Trump was listening to them, and so they voted for him twice. But the reality is nothing is happening to help them from either party. In the book Alienating America by conservative political columnist Tim Carney, Carney writes that these places are not looking for the American dream of wealth. They are looking for social connection, because their own established sources of social connection have disappeared. They don't feel connected with either party or us, the rest of America. They don't resonate with the issues of civil unrest or racism or issues of urban populations that are the struggle that's going on in our urban populations. What they want is, how can I get by day to day? How do I survive? They feel condescended to by Democrats, and frankly, they feel the Democrats don't like them. They lack services, and they can't look to either political party to help them. If we're to heal the schisms in our country, those who feel they won this week must put their energies and resources toward effective ways to help those in rural America who feel disconnected, disrespected, depressed, and not heard. I know I've already talked about eating one elephant, but this elephant needs to be eaten too. It's a challenge that's calling to me. I ask you again, how are you doing? Being part of a country we love and cherish and a democratic process we affirm and promote is hard. And if we're really engaged, we will have our heart broken by this country a number of times. As Parker Palmer reminds us, if we cannot talk about politics in the language of the heart, if we cannot be publicly heartbroken, how can we create a politics worthy of the human spirit, one that has a chance to serve the common good? He goes on to say, politics is an ancient and honorable human endeavor of creating a community in which the weak as well as the strong can flourish. Love and power can collaborate, and justice and mercy can have their day. We, the people, must build a political life rooted in the commonwealth of compassion and creativity still found among us. Because civic community sufficiently united to know our will, and we need to focus, what is our will? This is something we will continue to struggle with. And hold those who govern accountable to it. We've come through a very disorienting time in our lives, and for that matter, this whole country. It's challenging for all of us. I'm going to celebrate a win that means a lot to me, not gloat about it. And I'm going to rest. So I need rest. So that my head stops playing reruns of everything that happened during these past 4 years. And after a while, I will start in on those elephants that need eating. How about you? What are your plans for resting, healing, grounding, and for eventually eating a few elephants? I'd like to end today sharing with you a poem.